that protects the integrity of all ecosystems. Together, we can align efforts to safeguard ocean and coastal communities and ecosystems and our collective future. Vinava Levu, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for your statement. I give the floor to China, speaking on behalf of BASIC. China, the floor is yours.
尊敬的巴巴耶夫主席，各位同事，首先我代表中方感谢主席团队的努力和夜以继日的辛勤工作，感谢工业秘书处各议题协调员和各代表团为推进谈判所做的努力，感谢所有会议支持人员为会议所做的贡献，感谢巴库。今年是联合国气候变化框架公约生效30周年。30年的气候公约治理进程历经考验，虽非一帆风顺，但始终在向前行。人类是命运共同体，面对气候危机，我们唯有团结协作，共同应对。我们注意到，会议达成的 NCQG 成果文件中，发达国家的资金承诺远远未能满足发展中国家的需要，发达国家的资金义务必须进一步的明确。各位同事，即将到来的2025年是联合国成立80周年，同时也是巴黎协定达成10周年。站在新的历史起点上，各方需要不忘初心，砥砺前行，特别是在巴黎协定基础上行动，不倒退。应对全球气候危机，关键还是在于坚持共同但有区别的责任原则，坚持多边主义，同舟共济，合作共赢。中国作为负责任的发展中大国，无论国际形势如何变幻，将始终坚定与各方一道，推动气候变化多边进程和国际合作。中国将继续实施积极应对气候变化国家战略，落实碳达峰、碳中和目标，广泛开展气候变化南南合作，为全球绿色低碳、气候韧性和可持续发展作出贡献。让我们共同努力，向公约和巴黎协定确定的愿景迈出坚实的步伐，共同构建清洁美丽世界。谢谢主席。
Thank you for your statement. I now give the floor to Canada to make a statement. Canada, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Canada came to COP29 determined to strengthen global efforts to fight climate change. We were proud to come here to Baku with a diverse delegation that included Indigenous peoples, workers, youth, and civil society leaders. We came to learn, to listen, to work with others, and to secure strong outcomes. Because we see the worsening impacts of climate change in all of our countries. We came to COP29 with high expectations to build on the outcomes we agreed on in Dubai. We came here to translate our GST commitments into meaningful action, and we remain determined to work with partners to continue taking concrete steps. Mr. President, back home, what our citizens demand is that we drive down greenhouse gas emissions. In that context, we need to finalize ambitious NDCs in 2025 and take immediate and concrete steps to turn our NDCs into action. It also means we need to address mitigation here in this forum. We need to demonstrate to the world that we are credible and we are determined. On finance, Canada welcomes the important steps forward we've achieved here. Canada sees today's result as an opportunity to listen, to partner, and to act. Because for us, the goal is not just what we adopt on paper, but how we deliver upon our commitments. We know we have important work to do. And we know we can do better in unlocking new sources of finance and more transparent private sector mobilization. We know that funding needs to be available and accessible to those who need it most. There were other key outcomes that we cannot lose sight of. Together, we adopted a renewed program of work on gender. We have adopted the local communities' Indigenous peoples platform. We finalized tools to ensure the transparency and integrity of international carbon markets. We are, however, disappointed that we did not adopt a decision to shape the work on just transition and cement the importance of human rights and labor rights as we transition our societies and our economies. Before closing, Mr. President, I do want to thank you, the Presidency, your team, the UN Secretariat, and all the workers and volunteers who worked very long hours in support of COP29. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your statement. I now give the floor to Norway to make a statement. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I give the word to our youth delegate, Amalie Holmefjord.
27 million children suffered from hunger as a result of extreme weather events in 2022. In only 50 years, human activities have caused 2/3 of the world's wildlife population to disappear. I'm afraid of what the coming 50 years will bring. In Paris, you promised us to act, but since then, emissions have kept rising, and the consequences have only gotten worse. The new finance goal that we adopted today is not even close to reflecting the deadly impacts of the climate crisis, faced primarily by developing countries on the front lines. Today, we are recklessly speeding towards disastrous ecological tipping points. There is no time for dangerous distractions, and there are no excuses left. We need an urgent scaling up of climate finance, and we must stop funding climate destruction. The existential threat of climate change affects a world that is already suffering from extreme economic inequality. When responding to the climate crisis, we must do so while embracing the principles of solidarity and justice. Countries like ours need to take the lead. Although we, the youth, would have liked to see a finance goal in line with the needs and the science at least $1 trillion annually, this is still a tripling of the ambitions. Now we need to hold our countries responsible. All provider countries should go home and at least triple their climate finance immediately. Sami activist Ella Marie Isaksen has many times stressed that every environmental win is temporary and every loss is forever. We cannot afford to lose this fight, and forever is approaching quickly. I'm too disappointed to say I believe in you, so instead I will say we depend on you. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. I give the floor to Iraq to make a statement. Iraq, this floor is yours.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. بداية نتقدم بالشكر والامتنان للجهود المتميزة التي قامت بها دولة أذربيجان في استضافة أعمال المؤتمر، ونقدر جهود كافة الوفود في السعي لإصدار مقررات تضمن الحفاظ على جوهر اتفاق باريس وتعزيز تنفيذ أهدافه. وندعم بشكل كامل كلمة المملكة العربية السعودية نيابة عن المجموعة العربية ودولة أوغندا نيابة عن مجموعة 77 والصين. يعرب العراق عن التزامه في السعي إلى تحقيق التوازن بين الطموحات المناخية والاحتياجات التنموية، ويدعو إلى تضافر الجهود لدعم البلدان النامية من خلال تقديم الدعم المالي ونقل التكنولوجيا وبناء القدرات، بما يساهم في تحقيق العدالة المناخية والتنمية المستدامة ويضمن الالتزام بمبادئ الاتفاقية الإطارية واتفاق باريس. ونؤكد على موقفنا بخصوص الهدف العالمي الجديد للتمويل في أن يشمل مختلف قضايا التغير المناخي وبضمنها التخفيف والتكيف والنقل التكنولوجي وبناء القدرات، مع التركيز على ضمان تنفيذ التزامات الدول المتقدمة لدعم البلدان النامية بموجب اتفاق باريس، وأن تكون الخسائر والأضرار المرتبطة بالتغير المناخي جزءاً من الهدف الكمي الجماعي الجديد بشأن تمويل المناخ. ونرحب بما تم إعلانه من حجم التمويل المخصص للخسائر والأضرار، وندعو إلى المزيد من أوجه التمويل القائمة على المنح مع آلية تنفيذ عادلة وواضحة تضمن احترام إمكانيات الدول وظروفها. أما فيما يخص تنفيذ مخرجات الحصيلة العالمية الأولى، نؤكد على ضرورة أن تتوافق مع مبادئ اتفاق باريس في المسؤولية المشتركة ولكن المتباينة، ودعم البلدان في تنفيذ وثائق المساهمات الوطنية وخطط التكيف الوطنية وغيرها من الوثائق الوطنية، مع الأخذ بنظر الاعتبار ضرورة أن تحافظ وثائق المساهمات المستقبلية على طبيعتها الوطنية وأن تكون مستجيبة للاحتياجات والظروف الخاصة للبلدان، مع التأكيد بأن الهدف الجديد من حوار الإمارات لتنفيذ مخرجات تقرير الحصيلة العالمية هو مخصص لتحديد الفجوات المالية ومتطلبات التمويل اللازم لدعم البلدان النامية في تنفيذ أهداف اتفاق باريس. وإذ يعرب العراق عن اهتمامه بدعم الانتقال العادل والآمن والمستدام للطاقة باعتباره ضرورة حتمية لتحقيق مستقبل مستدام وشامل، مع ضرورة تضافر الجهود لإيجاد حلول متوازنة تحقق التحول نحو الطاقة المستدامة من دون أن تلقى بظلالها على الفئات الأكثر هشاشة في المجتمع، وأن يضمن الحياة الكريمة للشعوب ويسهم في الحد من الفقر وتحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة، ويراعي مبادئ الاتفاقية الإطارية واتفاق باريس مع التركيز على المسؤولية المشتركة لكن المتباينة وتحديد الظروف الوطنية للبلدان. كما نرحب بالتقدم المحرز في تنفيذ المادة 6 من اتفاق باريس في تصميم المبادئ التوجيهية والقواعد المعتمدة، وبما يشجع على الشفافية والوضوح في تداول بالسندات الكربون ويعزز استثمار المناخ العالمي. ختاما نؤكد على أهمية إجراءات التكيف في معالجة آثار التغير المناخي والحاجة إلى آلية واضحة لسد الثغرات في تمويل خطط التكيف، وكذلك أولويات التنفيذ والتمويل من الصناديق الخاصة به لضمان عدم زيادة العبء المائي على البلدان النامية. ونتطلع على مواصلة العمل في تنفيذ إطار الإمارات العربية للمرونة المناخية مع التأكيد على تطوير المؤشرات العالمية ضمن برنامج الإمارات بلمرسة التقدم المحرص نحو تحقيق أهداف هذا الإطار، وضرورة إيلاء الخسائر والأضرار أهمية قصوى، وخاصة وأن العراق من البلدان الذي يعاني من شح المياه والجفاف والتصحر وفقدان النظم البيولوجية، والتي تؤثر بشكل كبير على الأطفال والشباب والمعاقين وعلى النظام الغذائي والمائي والتراث البلد. ونؤكد على ضرورة أن تلتزم البلدان المتقدمة بالإيفاء بالتزاماتها تجاه البلدان النامية في مواجهة تأثير التغير المناخي وتحدياته، مؤكدين على ضرورة الأخذ بنظر الاعتبار مبدأ مسؤولية مشتركة لكن متباينة. ونؤكد أيضا على شكرنا وتقديرنا لسكرتارية الاتفاقية الإطارية لجهودها في تنظيم هذا المؤتمر مع وافر الاحترام والتقدير. شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you for your statement. I give the floor to the United Republic of Tanzania to make a statement. Tanzania, you have the floor.
Madam President, my delegation associates with the statement made by Kenya on behalf of Africa, Uganda on behalf of G7 and China, Malawi on behalf of LDC. Madam President, we came here with huge expectation on the climate finance. While we have made some progress on some items, we must acknowledge the challenge. We must acknowledge the challenge remaining ahead of us. For instance, Tanzania requires 19.2 billion for implementation of our NDCs. The cost will rise as time goes on. This demonstrates the need for ambitious and scaled-up provision of finance with clear responsibilities for developed countries. On carbon market, the United Republic of Tanzania commends the huge milestones on Article 6 under the Paris Agreement. And we are looking forward to participating in both market and non-market approaches as well as voluntary markets. For a functional and credible participation in this mechanism, we need additional capacity building. And we are open for cooperation with other parties and the market players on implementation of this decision. Madam President, while we acknowledge progress made on gender, we insist on the need for clear mandates on financing of the Lima work program. We are also concerned with increasing introduction of new concepts that are not in consistency with climate change, hence end up stalling the progress on the negotiation. On just transition, Madam President, just transition remains an important agenda for Tanzania, and it must include promotion of transition to clean cooking. Madam President, as we welcome the progress on the full operation of the Loss and Damage Fund, we also commend the dialogue on mountains and climate change. Tanzania harbors the world's highest freestanding mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro, which is one of the pieces of the evidence on how mountains and their ecosystem are impacted by climate change. We call upon relevant work programs and the constitutional bodies under the convention to integrate mountain-based action into their existing mandates and the work plan. Madam President, as we leave BAKU, let us carry forward the spirit of cooperation, partnership, and urgency. Let us remember that our action today will shape the reality of now and tomorrow. We must act with ambition, guided by science, adequate allocation of resources, and driven by moral imperative to protect our planet for current and future generations. To end up my statement, I extend my deepest gratitude to the government and the people of Azerbaijan for their warm and hospitality, and to all delegates for their tireless efforts. I welcome you all to the United Republic of Tanzania, the land of Kilimanjaro, Serengeti, and Zanzibar. Together we can, and we must rise to the challenge of our time. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your statement. I now open the floor for statements from the observer organisations. Please limit your intervention to 2 minutes. I now give the floor to the representatives of ENGO, a constituency of environmental non-government organisations. You have the floor.
Thank you. I speak on behalf of ENGO CAN, ENGO DCJ, TANGO, and WGC. We refuse to make an official statement and contribute to this sham of a process. We will not be complicit in the failure of COP that turned from Conference of Parties into a Conference of Developed Countries. We refuse to bring more legitimacy to a system that has collectively failed all of us for the benefit of few. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to a representative from Demand Climate Justice. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I make this again on behalf of ENGO CAN, ENGO DCJ, TANGO, and WGC. We refuse to make an official statement and contribute to this sham of a process. We will not be complicit in the failure of COP that turned from the Conference of Parties into a Conference of Developed Countries. We refuse to bring more legitimacy to a system that has collectively failed all of us for the benefit of few.
Thank you. I give the floor to a representative speaking on behalf of indigenous peoples' organizations. You have the floor.
Dagote, Madam President and parties, indigenous peoples from the 7 socio-cultural regions wish to condemn the unethical methods and even more unethical outcomes this COP has produced. There is nothing to celebrate here today. As peoples, as sovereign nations, we join the several other nations that have voiced their vehement objections to these unacceptable decisions that are continuing to destroy our planet. We support the CSOs who have chosen to use silence to refuse to give legitimacy to this sham of a process, but we have an obligation to speak and hold our place as rights holders in this space and ensure our disappointment is put on record. It is unacceptable that human rights and the rights of indigenous peoples were removed from NCQG and instead prioritize carbon market financing, which profoundly harms indigenous peoples. While we urgently need direct and equitable access to climate finance for adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage across all 7 sociocultural regions, we reiterate that we reject the financial colonization that comes from loans and any other financial mechanisms that perpetuate indebtedness of nations who have contributed the least to climate change yet bear the brunt of its tragedies. Our lands, waters, ice, and territories are melting and burning. Our peoples are suffering. We can no longer wait. Expecting us to be grateful for $300 billion by 2035 is expecting us to be grateful for you profiting off our preventable deaths. There is no just transition without the rights of Indigenous peoples being fully upheld. All adaptation and just transition actions must recognize us as the crucial and equal partners, the rights holders that we are. The knowledge systems of Indigenous peoples, our worldviews, practices, and sciences are distinct and provide a vital basis for effective adaptation strategies for climate change. Unlike the false solutions being proposed and even celebrated, our practices have been proven to work. Excluding our knowledge systems and worldviews from climate action risks the survival of all humanity. We all deserve better. We need parties to recommit to the 1.5-degree target, phase out fossil fuels, and transition to sustainable systems that respect human rights and the rights of Indigenous peoples. We offer you the leadership, solutions, and contributions of our communities in this collective fight for survival. Ashund.
Thank you for your statement. I give the floor to two representatives speaking on behalf of children and youth non-governmental organizations. Kindly be reminded to keep the statement to 2 minutes in total. You have the floor.
Distinguished chairs, parties, fellow observers. My name is Runi. Next to me is Mena. We are speaking on behalf of the Children and Youth Constituency, Yongo. We voluntarily disclose that we have no direct ties to fossil fuel or other emissions-intensive industries and no other conflicts of interest. Why exactly are you here? Are you proud of yourselves and what you have accomplished? Because children and youth are not. We are furious. We are devastated. Is this a joke to you? We have been waiting our entire lives for you to address this issue, and you keep dragging your feet. You have been arguing about this for so long and now have nothing to show for it. Barely agreeing on human rights. Are you serious? That should not even be up for discussion at a climate conference. The principle of just transition should guide the entire operationalization of the Paris Agreement. Our families, friends, entire countries are being sentenced to death because you don't have the guts to do what is right. Why do we have to beg you to stop having fossil fuel lobbyists in the room? Why do we have to beg you to make polluters pay up for the damage to our health, to our homes, to our planet? Why are we the one being punished, our future stolen? This deal kills the Paris Agreement. It undermines the convention. It shatters all hope. The just adopted quantum in the NCQG is not just insufficient. It is a blatant insult. NCQG needs to be anchored in gender and intergenerational equity. 300 billion is not even close to being enough. Trillions, not billions. The number finalized for what do not reflect ambition. It reflects abandonment. Additionally, the operationalization of Article 6 comes at unbearable cost. You are auctioning our future.
Promises without action are not hope, but hypocrisy. Finance must reach the most vulnerable communities with accessible pathways. What has been demonstrated by the global north in their future by addressing historical responsibility and take action for the most vulnerable is an act of betrayal. We stand by small island developing states and least developed countries, which contribute the least to this crisis but are impacted the most, and decry the actions taken by the Presidency and the Secretariat. Is this the standard you claim to represent? Being highly exclusionary and discriminatory. We support our civil society organization allies who have chosen to use silence to refuse to give legitimacy to this sham of a process. But we have an obligation to speak and hold our place as rights holder in this space and ensure our disappointment in both of record. We are incredibly disappointed when looking at the outcome, or better yet, a non-existent outcome of this COP. There can be no climate justice without gender justice and human rights. Cease fire now. Defund genocide.
Thank you for your statement. I give the floor to a representative speaking on behalf of business and industry non-governmental organization. You have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to address you on behalf of the International Chamber of Commerce and the Business and Industry constituency at the closing of this COP29. We extend our sincere gratitude to the COP29 presidency and especially the young volunteers of Azerbaijan for their tremendous efforts in staging this critical COP. We also thank the parties for their unwavering commitment until the very final hours. The global business community came to this COP with clear asks for a bold, actionable Baku package to match the urgency of the climate crisis, accelerate real-world mitigation and adaptation, and deliver vital support to the most vulnerable in this global transition. A package that responds to the following clear calls. First, an ambitious outcome on mitigation that delivers and builds on the Dubai promise, and that requests all parties to come forward with bold and 1.5 aligned NDCs in the coming months, informed by the outcomes of the first global stocktake. Second, a strong set of rules that fully operationalize Article 6.2 cooperative approaches and the centralized 6.4 crediting mechanism to establish a robust framework for the cooperation among countries to implement their NDCs. Finally, and most importantly, a truly ambitious, actionable, and comprehensive NCQG, one that has at its core a clear commitment to provide public finance that responds to the needs and priorities of developing and climate-vulnerable economies. In addition, we called for a goal that can be a real catalyst for the mobilization of private sector climate finance in developing economies. President, parties, these were our clear calls. While you've made some important steps forward, this is not enough, and much work remains to be done. As you prepare the next NDCs, the only push for greater mitigation ambitious outcome from last year's COP. This year, we've missed an opportunity. You must do better, and we know you can. Coming out of this COP, there's a urgent effort needed to build an enabling investment climate for private finance. The Baku to Belém roadmap will be critical in this regard. We've also heard here in Baku increasing concerns on uncoordinated national interventions that must be addressed as a priority. We would encourage a discussion on the climate and trade nexus at the next sessions. Real solutions to climate change lie in multilateral and multi-level cooperation and effective public and private partnerships. This is the only way to deliver on the Paris Agreement. The global business community stands ready to work with all parties towards Belém and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your statement. Dear delegates, I invite the COP to consider agenda item 20, conclusion of the session. This brings us to the end of the conference. I sincerely thank you for all your hard work over many long hours. I wish you a safe travel home and look forward to see you again. I declare the 29th session of the COP, 19th session of the CMP, and 6th session of the CMA closed.